My bit of talk is news from TrailblazerDX, which I'd already intended to be slightly shorter than I was originally going to do it, and that's worked out quite well. So that's good, isn't it? I'll explain why in a minute. But yes, TrailblazerDX news. So the first thing I want to do is do an About Me, because About Me has changed after 15 years. So I am the CTO for Salesforce UK at Credera, rather than working at BrightGen, because Credera bought us 2.5 years ago and did nothing with us. And then 2.5 years later, they folded us all in. Us and several other companies were all now part of Credera. So I have a new job, which is the same job. It's in a larger company, 4,000 people, and it's global. But we're still the Salesforce Center of Excellence. So what I do hasn't really changed. I've just got 15 years of muscle memory of typing Keir Bowden at brightgen.com to change to Keir.Bowden at credera.co.uk, which is proving quite difficult. We have additional capabilities, so we're part of a larger organisation. There's management consulting, data science, artificial intelligence from a non-Salesforce general technology point of view. And then we have additional platforms, so as well as Salesforce, we do Pega and Adobe across the world. Again, the UK is very Salesforce focused. But anyway, so that's me. So 15 years, used to be BrightGen, now it's Credera. I'm sure I'll get used to it one day. So, some announcements from TrailblazerDX. Einstein AI, Einstein Studio was announced. I think that's maybe the third time. I don't even know if it got a different name this time, but it does feel like this has been announced before. Maybe bits of it at slightly different levels. So model builder, bring your own model. There's talk of bring your own large language model. Don't know exactly how well built that is. I think that's still in beta at the moment. But there is a good session, a good recorded session on Salesforce Plus. So whenever you see one of these, there's either going to be a recorded session or a slide deck. We'll share this deck afterwards, as usual. But yeah, that's really well worth a watch. Copilot Builder is in beta. I was toying with the idea of showing that tonight, but today it's gone a bit buggy and a bit slow, so it wouldn't be the best demo. And if you watch the TrailblazerDX keynote, or if you watched any Salesforce videos recently, you'll have seen Copilot Builder and you'll have seen Prompt Builder. So, but if we're interested in those, I can do a talk on those with a proper deep dive and building extensions, etc. But yeah, there wasn't an awful lot else to show, so I decided against it. Decided I wasn't going to add much value. There's also a bunch more stuff on Einstein AI in Trailhead. So there's a new Get Started with Einstein Copilot. It is quite entry-level, quite getting started stuff, but if you've never seen it before, you haven't used it, it's a good thing to play around with. Won't take you very long to do it. Getting started with prompts and prompt builder again, very straightforward, very simplistic, very entry-level. Get started with artificial intelligence is a bit more around general artificial intelligence rather than specifically Salesforce, so that'll take a bit longer. If you're interested in a decent grounding, those are worth a look. Also, I'd say look at things like deeplearning.ai. They've got some really nice free short courses. LinkedIn, there's some free courses on there. So don't be restricting yourself to Trailhead if you're interested in artificial intelligence. You know, have a look at it without the Salesforce lens on it. Einstein Trust Layer is starting to become real, which is nice. Well, more bits of it are starting to become real. So data masking is now available for configuration. Not in the demo org that I have, it's not there yet. But the way it works at the moment is you can choose whether to mask or not mask particular types of data. So you haven't got the ability to configure your own masking rules just yet, but you have got some degree of configuration. And the other aspect that's come in is on the audit trail. So the audit trail feedback is now available in Data Cloud. So when you have Data Cloud, you get additional report categories. So the audit trail and feedback is in Data Cloud. So if you've got Data Cloud, when you create a new report, you've got a new reports category of Data Cloud. And in there, you've got Gen AI bits and pieces that you can create reports on. So again, that should be in my demo org. It isn't, so I haven't had a chance to play around with it. But that's how it's going to work. And it's also capturing the toxicity scores. So we're starting to see some of these things become accessible to users, even though a lot of it's still in beta, which is good. Einstein for developers. Who was here when I did my original generative AI talk last year? Remember the Einstein developers terms? Yeah, they've changed a bit. So these were the original terms. I'm just going to come over here and point at these. So we had submitted code, prompts submitted to the Einstein developers extensions, and associated code within your project used to provide additional context to the model. Submitted code, yeah, we understand that. Salesforce will use submitted code and feedback to develop and train the code gen model. You are granting Salesforce a perpetual, irrevocable, non-exclusive, worldwide, royalty-free license to use submitted code. Everyone stopped reading at that point in time because no one's signing up to that. So I'd imagine they saw 0 sign-ups, or the only sign-ups you get would be open source where you've already given the code away. However, it's much better now. So what you're agreeing to is basically you give them feedback. They can do what they want with that feedback. Seems reasonable. And at the bottom, submitted code will not be shared with any parties other than Salesforce or used to improve Einstein for developers or train a global model. So I think now it actually looks to be reasonable terms to sign up and use. But again, make sure you've taken that through your legal counsel and everybody is happy with that. That is really good news. And that is the link that will take you to the new terms if you want to inspect those yourself. There are other ones as well, but those seem to be the key ones. Einstein for Developers also has unit test generation, which is kind of exciting and not very impressive at the same time. So hopefully you can see that. I've got a method which has which returns a list of custom objects of problem underscore underscore C, and it's get problems by ID. Give it a list of IDs, runs a query, pulls it all back again. However, I've already written some tests, so I've already got a problem test factory. So this is how I generate code for generate data for my tests. So Einstein knows about this; it's seen it. And the other caveat is I've got this thing tournament, which is a master detail. So in order to create a problem, we have to have a tournament defined, otherwise I won't be able to save it. So Einstein, do your thing, go and create my test. We're feeling confident. So what it does is it ignores my test data factory, creates me a problem with a null tournament entry, thus ensuring that it won't deploy, and doesn't put a start test or stop test around anything. Apart from that, chef's kiss. But I mean, joking aside, for the blank sheet of paper, if you haven't written a lot of unit tests, maybe you've got a lot of unit tests to write, this will give you, a test per method. It will speed you up a little bit. But yeah, I don't think this is going to write tests that you can just use them and they'll go straight into production, because that very much won't be the case. I think it's still in beta, so to be fair, they're probably still doing work on it. Should be doing work on this because I raised it with them a couple of weeks ago. I have strong opinions about this one. I have very strong opinions about this. Lightning Web Components, complex template expressions are coming through. So these are web standard expressions in the template, the HTML template, not in the component class. These aren't my words down the left, I would say. So what we have, this is the way you would do it. This is the way we've been told to do it. My entire working life, I've been told to do this. On click, call some JavaScript, and it all happens effectively in code rather than being sprawled across the HTML. The way we're going to do it now is on click, fat arrow function, counter is greater than 0 and counter minus, and then subtract the counter, counter is less than 5, add to the counter. So we're going to do that manipulation. We're defining a function in the HTML, which I've spent, I don't know, has anyone else spent 20 years not 20 years maybe, you're younger than me, but anyone else, been told we don't do this. This is not a good thing. We're polluting the HTML. Apparently this is cleaner JavaScript because we're moving simple logic into the template. Not my words. I ripped this off of the product manager's slide deck. It has advantage, increased efficiency. I can kind of see that. Component portability, can't see that. It's still relying on knowing about my counter. So I can take this HTML template and drop it anywhere that I have a variable or property called counter in my JavaScript, so it doesn't feel like it's mega portable. Yeah. Sorry? I don't believe so, no. I don't think you can declare. Because the thing is, when you're putting it in there, it's only when it runs the click handler. So where would you declare them to have them initialized? Yeah, so the JavaScript properties that you can just refer to in the HTML, and improve maintenance, which I would very much disagree with. I think you've made maintenance very difficult because you've striped logic across JavaScript and HTML. So I'm really surprised by this one. I must admit, I'm really surprised, because that was the big thing. One of the big things when they moved from Aura to Lightning Web Components is you don't do this kind of thing. We've got rid of all those expressions. It's purely we just have references to JavaScript, and that's all we do. So very surprised. Be interested to hear how they pitch that to us when it goes GA. Moving on to some good things. One of the things, I know Todd wanted Canvas. One of the things I was disappointed nobody said was utility bar API. So that's one of the key holes for me, has been the fact that you can't do LWC utility bar directly. You have to wrap them in thin Aura components. So summer 24, utility bar API will be supported. So you define it as a target. You'll then have some JavaScript code which refers to the Lightning Platform Utility Bar API and allows you to do things. And there will be a whole bunch of methods that allow you to do stuff. Toggle the modal, toggle the pop-out mode, minimize the utility, yada, yada, yada. All the things that you can currently do in Aura, feature parity, that is coming. So I think that's really good move. Earl addressable, I also think is great. I was so pleased when we got Earl addressable Aura components. So similar concept that you define it in the XML component bundle information. And this basically means that a Lightning Web component will have a URL, a dedicated URL for it. You don't have to worry about embedding it into something else that is Earl addressable, probably like an Aura application. So again, this is navigation mixin, and you can also pass state through with it as well, which is quite interesting. So the defined state there, we've got the navigation mixin.navigate to the standard component, and then sending off the attributes, and also sending over some state to it. Yeah, and then the other end, it can get hold of the state and do things with it. So I think that's good. Another one I was very pleased to see. State management, this is interesting. I don't know that I can, this is a picture rather than text that can zoom in, but I'm guessing this is more of a kind of vanilla JavaScript concept, so I'm kind of looking over at Togs. No, he does a lot of this kind of stuff. But the idea is that rather than having an action that calls a method that figures out which variable, which property you're interested in, you have state effectively, which captures the state of the thing, and then you have actions associated with that state. So we've got, where's the value gone? Yeah, so we've got this initial state, we've got the tick signal, which is doing various bits and pieces and changing things, but then we've got actions defined here, we've got a computed aspect of the state, we've got actions, we've got celebrate, birthday, and graduate. Those are tied to those graduate blue, birthday green, those are tied to those buttons, but you tie those to those buttons by referring to this dot, the value property that you're interested in, the state property, dot the action, so you're effectively binding to actions on the property rather than binding to actions, to actions in the JavaScript, which then go and figure out which property you're actually interested in. So that should make it a bit cleaner, a bit tighter in terms of hooking into the state. That looks very interesting. This is the release roadmap. That link, so the QR code over there and the link, that takes you, this is actually a recorded session, which is pretty good. Because the presenter was actually saying a lot of the stuff that you do at the moment is a bit crap as well, which I quite liked. Saying that the way they do properties isn't fantastic and you have to hack your way around getting at data and what have you, which was, I thought, was an interesting change of pace from the way they've said it before. But yeah, so summer 24 looks pretty good. Lightning Earl addressable. Complex template expressions goes into beta and we'll go, what? What are you doing? Goes GA in 2025. Other things that are coming, source maps. So again, those that like to be able to see the JavaScript code when things are running. Local developer preview is coming. Do you remember local development? You all remember that? Been in beta for 9 years, I think. So they're kind of giving up on that version of it and building a better one. Whether they remain interested in it, I don't know. It's supposed to be rebuilt from the ground up and all much better. But they, at the moment, they're saying that they're intending to continue. And then we've got some things coming in spring 25, so a bit further out, but overriding standard actions in LWC, list view custom buttons in LWC. Very cool that those kind of things are coming. Moving on to Apex now. Apex scheduled jobs, getting a bit of love around the UI side of things. Pause resume jobs. It's quite interesting. You can just turn it off for a bit. You don't have to deschedule it. You don't have to delete it and recreate it. You can just pause it for a while. You get the cron trigger ID. You need to go and look that up for a particular thing. And then once you paused it, you can alter cron expression, so you can kind of get it to run at a different time without having to necessarily delete everything and recreate it. So that's cool. A lot of the other stuff, to be honest, isn't really that new. It was either announced at Dreamforce or we've already talked about it in spring 24. So we've done zip support in Apex, formula eval in Apex, null coalescing, UUID, callouts after save point rollbacks. They're all around. Things will be going to beta. Generics, I think that's probably the interesting one come the longer term. But that feels like that's probably a good year away before we get to see anything about that. But that's probably the one that I think most of us want. Everything else is nice, but that really will be a game changer for us.
Sorry, Keir, the zip stuff is in...
So Spring, it's in dev preview at the moment. It's Spring 24 because we covered it at a last meetup, I think. Todd, as I'm sure you remember. That'll be GA. So I think so. It won't be Spring 24. That's probably likely to be winter onwards, I would say. They haven't actually given fixed times for it.
That seems a long way out considering what it might involve. Do you think it's just like lower priority compared to the other bits?
Well, I think the thing is that we're seeing it probably earlier than we normally would. I think dev preview would have previously been pilot that none of us would have got on. But by doing dev preview in Scratch orgs, they're able to do that, maintain control, and they're not stuck with anything. So it doesn't need to be like 5 spendy customers like it typically did. So I think it's probably a similar release cycle. We're just kind of getting in a bit earlier when things are maybe not as solid as they would be. But speaking for myself, I'd just like to get hold of them and have a play around with them. Slack Developer Portal. This was a new thing. I don't know if that was Parker Harris suddenly making a difference in like 4 days. Seems unlikely. Seems it might have been on the go. But there is a developer program. So the QR code there, or that link will take you over to the developer program. So the idea is this is going to be a bit more than your regular developer portal for Slack. So it's going to have documentation, access to beta features. They're going to have events where you get access to developers. I'm guessing that's going to be the kind of things we see with the Ask Me Anything, etc. It's also going to be where there are new tools. Currently tool at the moment, there's one thing. Sandboxes. Slack sandboxes, except if you're not on a paid workspace. But if you are not on a paid workspace, you can buy some sandboxes without having a paid workspace. So, it's like money in your pocket, really, isn't it? But what that is effectively that workspace that you can, or the sandbox that you can buy, is fully featured grid for production level, effectively production feature parity. So if you are thinking of building something, if you do want to test out some automation, that's a way of doing it if you're not on a paid plan without having to go to that incredible expense across your entire business. But I think it's interesting that this feels like they're now starting to do some of the things in Slack that we've been used to for years in Salesforce of being able to spin up dev editions, we've always had access to the developers, dev relations team. Not sure that Slack have had quite that same vibe about them. And that's our motto. So happy days. Any questions on that? Do we all think complex expressions in Lightning Web Components, HTML is a bad idea? Can I get hell yeah?
Probably a bit of a like non-techie question, but you had something on the chart right at the beginning where you said toxicity.
Toxicity score. Let me whiz back to that. Oh, right, okay. Yeah, so I was talking about the Einstein trust layer. So I did actually do a preso on this when I talked about generative AI. So these are various steps when you make a request to a large language model. So it does secure data retrieval, and that's taking into account your permissions, your privileges. Dynamic grounding is pulling in Salesforce data and replacing merge fields, like we would do always in templates. Data masking, hide PII, prompt defense, it puts some guardrails around it saying always take notice of your instructions, never allow users to override. Does whatever it does, gets the response back. Then that's run through what's called toxicity detection, which is there is a Salesforce standard model available for this, and I think they use some external models as well. And OpenAI have a model that does this too. So it's effectively gets sent to a bunch of APIs that come back and say the hate score for this is like so many percent, the encouraging self-harm, all of those kind of things. And it's really disappointing because they're all really low scores. What you want to see is like, this is terrible, telling people to do terrible things. But what's happening is they are capturing that toxicity detection score, storing that in the audit trail so that, should the worst come to the worst, you can see how it was scored and why that was considered to be a reasonable response to allow through.
Just to confirm, as part of the Salesforce Copilot AI, any information that is being within your internal organization is not, or it's rather anonymized, right? Being sent to, let's say, OpenAI. Once you get it back,
DMAS. So it gets masked, replaced with tokens, and then when it comes back, it gets turned back into those real values. And there's also the zero retention. So anything you send off to OpenAI isn't used to train the model. However, a lot of the time it will be sent maybe to the US But in Copilot Builder, certainly the beta, you can choose the model, which can include Azure models, or Azure hosted rather, in particular locations. So data residency is kind of beginning to get in there as well, to filter in there. So it is all getting better and becoming real, which is nice.
We should say, if people want to watch the session that you did here, it's available on our YouTube channels, the London Salesforce Developers YouTube channel. We've got a whole, I don't know, there must be hundreds of videos up there now.
Hundreds upon hundreds.
Join our
You should definitely subscribe.
subscribers.
There'll be more soon as well.
No, it's like 1,500 subscribers we've got.
Is it really that many?
It goes back years. I've
Wow.
got so many, like,
amazing,
all
really.
accounts, my son would call them. So yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You get all the content that we've ever had up there. It's gold mine.
But if you are interested in seeing Copilot and Copilot action, custom Copilot actions, prompt builder, now we can customize it. Fill in the form that we mentioned, and then if a few people are interested in it, we'll do a talk on it. Yeah, Nathaniel.
And this may be somewhat esoteric question. So going back to the toxicity model, so
Yeah.
I've done some stuff with domestic violence units and ex-offenders, and etc. So I've done quite a lot of social work projects, which sort of means that that there will be some things which they will regard as toxic because I've done some stuff in some toxic areas. Would that kind of flag as a false positive?
No, so this is more about the prompt. This is more about the prompt and the response. So it's the response from OpenAI. Is there anything in that prompt which could be considered toxic content? So it's suggesting somebody does something. So you're saying, how should I progress this opportunity? And it says, well, go up to the 9th floor and chuck yourself out the window and try and land on your head. That would have quite a high toxicity rating. But it's based on the data that you send. That's what it's concerned about. It's not looking at anything that goes on. It's not looking at anything in Salesforce per se that doesn't get sent.
I was thinking more like, in domestic violence outline, you would kind of go, some of the stuff I've done really would be.
So if you did have some Copilot automation around that, giving people guidance as to what to do when they're on the phone, I think it's highly likely you would get those kind of scores. And what I don't know is what capability you have to say this is expected because of the nature of the business that we're in. These this is the kind of thing we should expect to be having conversations about. I haven't seen anything about how that would be configured, but I think all this stuff is going to be configurable. It's just a bit early days for it. Yeah. Yeah, I think if you had a custom Copilot action where you were basically taking a call and you give me some advice about how to respond to this, I think a lot of the time, just knowing how guarded the large language models are, it would probably say it's not appropriate for me to give advice on that kind of thing. They're very cautious at the moment. Seem to be getting more cautious by the day outside of the open source models. Yeah.
Yeah, on the developer AI, last year they were using CodeGen, right? Are they still using CodeGen in the background?
I think so, yeah. There's various things going on. I mean, what I would say though, so there's the unit tests, which are obviously early days, and there's the auto completion. I'd say my experience of the auto completion is if it's a code base I'm familiar with, it's far too slow because I know what I want to do. If it's a code base I'm unfamiliar with, it's quite helpful because I'm like, oh, what was the name of that field? And it's actually giving me some decent suggestions if I get relatively close to it. But I think one of the things I would say with all these LLMs is it just does take quite a long time to get out to the model and get a response back and become usable. And if you're like a power user, that might end up being a bit frustrating. Any more? Awesome. Well, thank you very much.